Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Marvel Mystic Mayhem. Today's going to be the first video in a series of videos that I like to call Worth the Whale, which is where we're basically going to evaluate whether the new character that has come out on Banner is worth spending your great keys on. To be clear, this is not a video series where I tell you to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a particular character in a mobile game. What I want to give you is sort of an overview and a recommendation that if you have great keys, if you're free to play and you have some of these great keys, you've been saving up your great keys or you get them through the course of playing, should you be spending those precious earned great keys on this particular character or not? We're going to talk about whether the character is good, how to use them if they're good, what kind of gear artifacts to put on them, and then if they're not good, why you shouldn't be spending your great keys on them and you should skip them instead, okay? So first up, for the 4th of July weekend, we'll be talking about Captain America. Is Captain America good? Yes. Should you stop pulling on Iron Man if you don't have him yet, or if you are close to completing the pity on his banner, the 80 pulls? No. Iron Man is the best AoE physical damage hero in the game at the moment. And so if you can get him, you should try and get him. There's about, looks like kind of 4 days left for you to pull on Iron Man. I think he is worth getting if you don't already have him. And then afterwards, you can maybe spend some great keys pulling on Captain America. But Iron Man, I think, is probably a must for your roster. Captain America is good. I don't think he's completely, absolutely necessary at this moment. So he's not worth dropping everything to not get Iron Man. If you are done with Iron Man, then yes, I do think you should be pulling for Captain America. I know he's another tank in this game that already has so many good tanks. He has a few things that I think make him super worthwhile. And first is the flexibility that his ultimate gives you. Kind of lets you choose between a more offensive approach or defensive approach. Let me pull him up real quick here, right? So he gets to switch between offensive stance, which gives you 3 mana, or defensive stance, which grants all allies a shield. And his flexibility that you get, I think, makes him useful across a variety of different game modes. And importantly, he's not one damage specific typed, right? So he helps out characters of all damage. Just being able to feed your team mana also means that he can help out pretty much everybody. That's a really big win in my particular eyes. I think mana control, generation, and manipulation are probably things that are going to make a character really, really top tier in this game. That seems to be something that is really important here. In addition to all of that, the energy cost of his ultimate is just 200. Besides him, just Lady Bullseye has an ultimate energy cost of 200. It is extremely low, and so he is able to pop his ultimate basically all the time. That really means that if you keep popping the offensive stance, you can keep feeding your team mana. And 3 mana is pretty good. It basically gives you instantly another skill that you can use. So when I end up playing with him, I can basically keep popping his ultimate, get a skill out of that, use the skill, already have some passive mana generation right already, just because that's how the game works. And so you can usually pop off 1 or 2 skills pretty quickly, and then you can kind of go back to setting yourself up for sort of the next rotation there. But outside of that, his defensive stance kind of gives you this ability to time your sustainability. So I'll give you an example. In the current Nightfall, Dragon Armor, right? You can see when Dragon Armor is about to do his big attack. So what I can do is I can pop over into defensive stance, make sure everybody gets a shield. It's almost kind of like a mini heal with how often his ultimate gets up. Make sure that they're able to tank that hit. I might use his magic circle to give myself a little bit more survivability if I feel like I need it. And then I can switch back to offensive stance and start, outputting a lot of skills that way. Speaking of Nightfall, let me go to Nightfall here and show you one reason why people think he's good as well. It's not just me who thinks he's good, right? If you just look at the top ranks on the leaderboard for this Nightfall, he basically is dominating here. There's one team here that doesn't have him, and that's that same team down here, but everybody is using Captain America here to score top ranked on Nightfall. That being said, I do want to reiterate, I don't think he's just good in Nightfall and this particular Nightfall. I think because he has that flexibility in his stances, he is good across a variety of game modes. I've found that I've basically immediately been using him for everything. So let's talk about his other skills, though, outside of his ultimate. His magic circle is pretty great. It's 3 costs, but if you have his highlight, which I'll discuss more a little bit later, it basically refunds a mana to you if you can get everybody in there. The attack increase is actually pretty substantial. I think it's on the order of like 44% or something like that. And then the defensive stance is also really good. Just again, giving your team a little bit more survivability if you need it. Probably depends on how much you have it upgraded as to what those percentages are. And then finally, he's got the ability to put a taunt on himself in defensive stance, right? So you can take the heat off of your allies, but also he can kind of direct your allies into a particular character. So maybe your team is spread out and you want to focus on one particular character and make sure that you've got all of your attacks funneling into that. You can do that too. And in a game where basically all the attacks are auto, it's not turn-based, right? I mean, we have the card system, but this, I think, is also an additional premium. Having the ability to direct attacks towards a particular character with his offensive stance, and then being able to direct all the enemy attacks towards him with a taunt, I think makes him really, really good. He's basically like a combination of a tank and a really good support character. So he's like a support, but one that can frontline. And importantly, like I mentioned earlier, he's not damage specific type like something like Emma Frost, where she's just affecting special damage type. Okay, so let's say you've already pulled him and you're not sure what to do. If you plan to keep pulling him and you reach that 80 pity system down here, right? Should you be getting a duplicate shard for him for the Soul Saga, or should you be going for the highlight? Personally, I think the highlight is worth it. The Soul Saga he has is good, but I think the highlight sort of has an extra edge because the extra effect on it sort of puts him over the top. So if we take a look at it, you can see I obviously went for the highlight here. So this is just good. HP and defense, plus 10%. Well, I'll talk a little bit later about why HP and defense are 2 of the stats that you should be focusing on for him. Again, additional attack when he uses his ultimate, which is going to be basically all the time. And then I really like that you get this additional mana refund when you put all 3 people in his magic circle, which is what you should be aiming for anyway. Just another mana manipulation sort of skill that's really, really priceless when it comes to this game, I think. So if you're in the situation where you are going to keep pulling great keys on his banner and you get to that 80, but you already have him pulled, I think you should choose the highlight over the duplicate. But that's just sort of my personal opinion there. Okay, but speaking of highlights, let's just go talk about what you should use on him if you don't have his hero-specific highlight. What works well? Well, basically any of the defensive highlights are good because they all boost HP, defense, or some give some other sort of effect here, right? So this is another gold highlights. The wearer's HP increased by 10%. That's going to be good. And then this gives a shield equal to 10% to the hero, and they take less damage while having a shield. This would make him really, really survivable. HP increases, defense increases. Basically, any of this stuff is going to be pretty good. I would put on him what you have that is the highest available highlight in terms of rarity, in terms of what you have already leveled up as well. But basically, he can take any sort of defensive highlight that you already have, and it will work on him pretty well. Okay, so those 3 stats I was talking about, energy generation, HP, and defense, why do you want to focus on those? Well, energy generation, because you want to make sure that he keeps popping off his ultimate as much as he can. It's got such a low value at 200 that it's pretty possible to have it up really, really frequently. But why HP and defense? Well, that is in anticipation of this highlight at level 61 here, where every 1,000 max HP increases his attack, and then every 100 defense also increases his attack. So basically, this highlight, this talent is rewarding you for speccing into survivability by not punishing you with having to choose between survivability and attack, if that makes sense, right? You can spec into survivability, and as a result, you still get some additional attack, which is pretty crazy. It's basically less of a trade-off between a full face tank and like one that hits like a wet noodle versus one that is a tank that just has a nuke, but kind of sort of squishy. Which, by the way, it kind of seems like all the tanks in this game can like hit really hard if you build them the right way. Juggernaut can hit really hard. Sentry can hit really hard. Armor can hit really hard. I think Hulk can hit really hard too. So it's kind of a weird, curious thing to me that they basically make all of their tanks really hard hitting if you build them the right way. But okay, anyways, to summarize this, the 3 things you need are energy generation first and foremost, and then HP and defense after the fact. And that basically any highlight you have the highest level one is going to work on him. But I do think that his character specific highlight is definitely worth it. Okay, so let's talk about artifacts. I'm running the Gamma Mutagen and the ID card here. I think the Gamma Mutagen is probably a must just because it gives you that additional energy generation. And I'm just going to keep harping on about the fact that for him, energy generation is a top priority. ID card, I think, is pretty optimal, but you have a little bit of room to move things around if you don't have a really good ID card or if you've got something else that's better. And we'll go through that here. But what I like about ID card is that, especially if you're running his highlight, you're getting basically 25% attack for your allies every time he ults. And that's going to be very, very consistently. So this isn't an ideal ID card, in my opinion, because it doesn't have an energy generation slot in here. So HP, energy generation, and defense would be the 3 ideal substats you'd want for an ID card. If you feel like he needs a little bit more survivability, then I think you could maybe do HP glove. I think the sling ring is fine, and the HGH injection, whatever this is also fine, but not ideal. But if you need a little bit more survivability, you want to go HP glove, and then you could run the shield here to do defense. But I think optimally, you're going to run ID card. All right, so how do you actually play with him? I'm going to show you some Nightfall footage here. This is not a well-optimized run, and I'm playing it on 2x speed, but I just want to show you kind of what my strategy is and what I'm thinking about when I go through something like Nightfall here. Okay, so what I like about his buff, basically I'm always going to be spamming the offensive stance to feed mana here. And then using the buff is really great, especially when you're running with Iron Man, because that's going to immediately give him stacks of Arc Pulse, right? So anytime you use a 3 mana skill with Iron Man on the team, well, except his own, then he's going to get these Arc Pulses. And then look at that. I already have full Arc Pulse, and I could spam it, and I think I do, yeah, right away, and blow these away. Just trying to get through here. I was trying to avoid getting hit by the Dragon Armor right there. So I'm pretty much always spamming offensive buff, get 3 mana, immediately use a bunch of skills. Boom. You can see, though, that even though Juggernaut has pretty good, I put energy generation on Juggernaut as well, and I try and spam his shield to increase his ultimate. Captain America has already had 2 ultimates in that time period before Juggernaut even got 1 ultimate. So you really can spam this as much as you want. I think right now what I'm going to do is actually do a defensive one, give myself a little bit of basically doing a small heal here before I go into the next final round here. One thing I also like about his talents, the middle one, I believe, is that you do 50% more damage when you are doing your shield throw within his circle. So you put the shield down, or you put the magic circle down, you give yourself offensive up basically anyway, and then plus 25% from a bunch of other things. And then now you're going to do the shield throw, and you actually could do pretty good damage with him. It's not going to be something like Scarlet Witch or Iron Man or whatever, but for a tank, I think he does keep up with some of the other tanks in terms of damage, you know, and able to basically provide DPS and not just be a wet noodle when it comes to doing things like Nightfall. Okay, so now I'm going to do this again. And you can see that what's often the case is I'm worried more about positioning and not worried about mana. So I almost never am like really in a dire mood for mana. Instead, I am just figuring out what is the best skill to use and how quickly I can use it. I'm also playing it 2 times. If I was really wanting to optimize this, I'd be playing it at 1 times and doing some things over. I made some mistakes here, but you can see there, I just switched to defensive stance to take that hit from Dragon Armor. Maybe at some point I will do a Nightfall series of videos as well. The goal with this one is really you just need to be clearing mobs as fast as you can, because armor is going to be doing the most damage you have here. And I also don't think putting on like vulnerability and debuffs on the Dragon Armor is a good strategy, because you can't target him most of the time. And so if you're just trying to run Doctor Strange and run sort of a debuff comp like you can with the Nightmare Eye and Scarlet Witch, I don't think it works out as well. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but from my a little bit of testing, it doesn't seem like if you put like defensive down or vulnerability on dragon armor that the team move you get does like really any more damage. Because it would be cool if you could stack debuffs on him and then do the team move, and then and it basically one hits him. But I don't think that that's the case. So that's just a little bit of how I play with him. I really try and focus on using his offensive stance to feed my team as much mana as possible, and then other than that, I can use him for flexibility in terms of getting the taunt and giving my team a little bit more survivability. That's kind of how I use him. I think he works pretty well. I use him in pretty much every game mode that I have. So I have one last thing to show you all. Let me pull it up. Okay. Make this full screen here. So this was posted on the official Marvel Mystic Mayhem Twitter, and it is basically a introduction here for Hydra Supreme. And so I posted this in my Discord, and I think there are a number of options as to what this means. I think it's the official text says welcome to the dreamscape. I think that could mean just welcome to the game, basically. But a lot of people seem to think that it could be a boss. I don't know whether that's going to be a new story mission. Doesn't seem likely because the last story starts at like level 61. And so I imagine that's going to take you to level 70, which is the current max. Could be a new Memento boss, though. Or what I think is maybe the most likely is that it is going to be a new Nightfall boss that's going to rotate in after Dragon Armor is done here in a few weeks, which I think would be really cool. So I played the closed beta and alphas and whatnot, and the only two bosses were Dragon Armor and the Night Terror Eye or whatever it is. So adding a third to the rotation would be really good instead of going back to the Eye after Dragon Armor is done. I think there are a few other possibilities, though, as to what this could be. It could be a new character that's coming out. That seems a little unlikely to me because we just got Captain America. His banner's up for another 10 days. Is this the next character afterwards? It just seems like, kind of back to back. I'm not sure I believe that, but could also be them rolling out their cosmetic kind of costumes. There are some achievements in the game specifically for getting costumes, it seems like. So this could be the introduction to that. And I think people would be pretty excited about that. We'll see if it's like, sort of pay to win where their costumes give you stat bonuses, which I'm personally not a fan of. I prefer they just be cosmetic. But outside of that, outside of costumes, outside of a new boss, I think the most unlikely, but most interesting to me sort of option would be an additional progression system, or basically sort of a alternate progression system to your characters. So basically each character would have sort of a nightmare version and a dream version. The dream version is Captain America. The nightmare version is Hydra Supreme. And then basically you can upgrade or spec into either of those versions and unlock them somehow and play with them somehow. So the consensus on my Discord seems to be that it's either going to be a new boss or a costume, but let me know what you think down in the comments. And thanks for watching. Take it easy.